If you want to see the look of panic, real cold sweat, hyperventilating terror, ask a parent of a teenager about the cost of college. Fear is real and justified. Last year, the average graduate got a diploma and an IOU for about 35 grand in loans. About 70% of students now have debt. It's up from 64% in 2005. On the campus of Bunker Hill Community College, students are very concerned about paying for their education.
Not so affordable, especially if you're by yourself as a student, without parent assistant, and you're doing everything by yourself. It's pretty hard to maintain as a full-time student and a full-time worker. So it is pretty hard to maintain.
Now, the state is proposing a new program to help community college students pay for their education. It's called Commonwealth Commitment. Full-time students who keep their grades up could get a 10% rebate on tuition and fees. Also provide some pretty generous financial incentives to help students who want to go on and pursue a bachelor's degree at one of the state's public universities. Joining me tonight to talk about all this are Marty Meehan, the president of the University of Massachusetts System. Good to see you. And Chris Gabrielli, the chair of the Board of Higher Education for the state. Good to see you too, Chris. How many kids is this? I love this idea, the abstract. When I read in the paper, you estimate 100 kids in the first year.
Well, if you look
only?
at right now, the question is whether or not more kids hear about it and they want to get involved in it, and that number could increase. We think it's going to be popular. It's an opportunity for somebody to get a college degree for somewhere between $30,000 and $33,000, $34,000. That's a pretty good deal.
And I asked the governor the other day, he was in the studio on the radio with us the day that you guys had your press conference, and I said, how much is it going to cost? And he said, we just don't know because we don't know how many. So when you figure out how much it's going to cost, who's paying for it?
We're going to go out and raise money privately at UMass. We're going to use our endowment. We've increased the amount of money we're putting into financial aid by $20 million this year alone. That money, obviously, most of it comes from students in terms of fees. But if somebody wants to board at UMass, it costs about $23,000 to $24,000. But the net price is about $16,000. That's because we give significant amounts in financial aid.
So, Chris Gabrielli, is this more likely to keep that young woman we just saw from dropping out? Is that the theory, that this level of assistance is going to provide an incentive to stay, or at least make it easier to stay?
I think it's certainly important to provide the incentive and to do something about the affordability of college education. This is a significant, to be able to graduate on average, if you go to a state university here for the second 2 years or UMass, on average it's going to be about $25,000. When you consider for 4 years of education, and that's before financial aid, so it'll be probably less, on average maybe 15. That is the best deal in Massachusetts higher education. And the problem is there's a lot of students who start community college who really don't understand that if they go full-time, they do a good job, that they can transfer to these wonderful state universities and UMass and complete and put themselves in a great position. So we really want to highlight to them. We want to incent them. We want to highlight to them, stick through this path and you will get to where you want to.
Let me try to provide a little more financial savings for you all, if I may be so presumptuous. Is it the idea, my understanding is this happens in my home state of Pennsylvania with Penn State, that the four-year institution has absorbed some of the community college. It obviously is cost effective because you save on administration, you avoid nightmares like this Bridgewater State thing with a guy with hundreds of thousands of dollars vacation. Has there been any consideration of, what are there, 15 community colleges? Is that what it is currently? Is that what it is, 15?
14.
14. Has the notion of absorption of them within the system, first 2 years at a UMass campus, and then if they choose to continue, they continue. Is that a ridiculous idea?
I don't think it's a ridiculous idea. As a matter of fact, I think if you look at the number of students from Massachusetts who graduate from high school is actually going to come down. I honestly think this is a tough political issue, but I think some kind of consolidation looking forward is going to be important. From a UMass perspective, as our selectivity has gone up, the number of students we take from community colleges has gone up dramatically. So I think looking at how to consolidate, how to merge is really a good idea, and I think looking over the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I think it's going to be important.
It's easier for him to say than you to say, I think. So do you think it's a decent idea, worth considering?
There may be really some specific campuses or geographies where that makes sense. I mean, community colleges serve, a lot of different types of students and a lot of students who don't even want to complete. So, the first time right out of high school student going right there, that's the focus in large part for this program, this Commonwealth Commitment. But if you looked at a community college, they're serving a wider range of people, and they're pretty cost effective per student. So I'm not saying there shouldn't be some consolidations, but even the geography, UMass has 4 campuses around the whole state that serve undergraduates, right? So, they're a lot more local to the students.
As I say, I really like this idea. However, it seems to me that the big nut that's got to be cracked here is on the state level, at the State House. You save $5,000 whatever you're saving a kid, and that's not nothing. I understand it's very significant. Up until a couple of years ago, no state had cut its commitment to higher education more deeply. There's 6 states that had cut their commitment
That's right.
more deeply than Massachusetts. Finally, we got back closer to this 50-50, 50% from the state, 50% tuition and fees. But essentially, it was cost shifting for more than a decade. You're a former business guy. You may still be a business guy I don't know what you're doing on the side here, if you're even allowed to, but your business, what is more important to them than having their state invest in, not freezing as I think they're proposing this year, increasing dramatically funding for higher education? My understanding from your statistics, 3 out of 4 kids who graduate from UMass system stay in the state as compared to only 50% or something from private universities. Isn't this a dream for businesses? Why are they not kicking the crap out of the legislature saying we need serious money in the system?
Look, I think that's a fair point, and I think there's nothing more important than for the student themselves, for our community, for first-generation college goers, for everyone involved, including, as you say, business, to see us succeed at that. And we're certainly going to be running increasingly short of college graduates. I want to emphasize one point, though. This is not just about making it cheaper. This is about incenting students to stick with it. So we have about 12,000 students a year who start community college. At the end of the first year, fewer than 20% have the normal credits that a first year would get.
So you're intimating it's not just about the money.
Not at all. So those students are doing themselves ultimately a disservice. I understand they have other challenges in their life, but the data shows that the more a student decelerates, the less likely they are.
So what are you doing to fix that? I know
that's part of what this is about, is showing these pathways where you could tell a student right up front, 4 years from now, you can hold a BA in your hand from the University of Massachusetts or from the state university system if you follow this path. The financial incentive, frankly, is the less important in my mind, even though it's important to do that, than it is to point students to success. We have tons of students who don't complete in this state. They start and they don't complete. That's why we have too few college graduates.
Well, let me stay on the money, though, for a second. And let's assume even Chris Gabrielli is right that it's second tier. I'll tell you, as a parent who had 2 kids at private schools, and I make a decent amount of money, it's a pretty high priority for me.
$15,000 for 4 years. Would that not be the bargain of the century?
Of course it is, but isn't it incumbent on the legislature to, other than this couple of year blip a year or 2 ago, it has devalued the contribution the state public higher education makes?
One of the things I'm doing in my first year is I'm meeting with CEOs from across the state, and we will be organized as CEOs. CEOs get it. They understand that we're an innovation economy. The future of Massachusetts, from my perspective, runs through the University of Massachusetts.
So why don't they lobby as hard for this as they do for tax breaks for their businesses?
I think we're going to see increasing them getting more involved. I think, frankly, many of them are surprised to hear that if you factor in inflation, we get less money at University of Massachusetts for operating budget than we did when Mitt Romney was governor.
Is that so?
So we have had significant cuts. In fact, when the Congress passed a stimulus bill a few years ago, Massachusetts was one of the few states in the country to ask a waiver so that they could cut higher education at the same time they were taking the stimulus money. Only 6 states in the country did that. So Massachusetts does not traditionally have a record of funding public higher education.
Do you think that's because they're enamored of the Harvards and the MIT? Is that, how do you explain that?
I think political leadership over the last 30 years, 3 decades in this state, has viewed public higher education as a safety net for either students that can't afford to go to a private institution or students who aren't smart enough to get into them.
Not as a first priority as it should be.
The paradigm has changed. We educate the workforce.
I don't think there's any question that in a state with such extraordinary private universities that has an effect on the tone. I certainly totally agree with you that for the future of Massachusetts, from a social justice point of view, but an economic success point of view, we need our public higher education system to be effective and successful for far more students.
People will learn more about this Commonwealth Committee. Is that on your website?
It's on the Board of Higher Education website, and I assume UMass is as well.
On the University of Massachusetts website.
By the way, when you come back next time, longer school day, #1 in our discussion. Is that a deal?
That's a deal.
I'm obsessed with it.
Thank you for saying that.
Great to see you.
Chris Gabrielli, great to see you.
Jim, good to see you.
Thank you, gentlemen.